Hey, we are United by Rice. I'm Junko Goda. I'm here with my co-host Ben Lee. How's it going, Ben?
Hey, Cinta, how are you? Things are good here. I'm here in Milan, Italy for some other work.
Fancy.
So it's a little bit later in the day than it is for you, and it's hot. But outside of that, I'm doing well.
It's not actually too hot here in LA, although I think tomorrow's supposed to be like high 80s in downtown LA tomorrow. So, yeah. I heard today's guest is Star Wars related.
Yes. We have Varda, Varada. I'm sure I butchered it, but she will say her name in the interview, and she says it, of course, in a very authentic way. So I can't say it. I don't have the tongue flexibility to be able to do it. But Varada Sethu, she plays one of the beloved characters in a show that I just absolutely adored this year called Andor, and it's actually the second season of Andor, and she plays Cinta. But she's also South Indian, one of the actually few Indian characters and female characters they've now had in the Star Wars universe. But I think I don't think it's a stretch for me to say she's probably now one of the more prominent, given the success of this show. But anyway, it was a very exciting interview for me. I've done a few different interviews of different craft crew for Andor as well, and I just love the show. I could talk about it forever.
I was gonna say I've watched season one of Andor, which actually it was a good solid season one, but I am not a Star Wars person, so I'm more of a Star Trek person. So hence
Yes.
for you, like what drew you into Star Wars? I mean, I'm sure it's probably started as a child and stuff, but
Yeah, I think that timing is everything, right? So I was, a kid really of the 80s, but so wasn't old enough to have seen, or I don't think Star Wars came out, I think, in 1976, if I'm guessing correctly. So I wasn't old enough to see the original Star Wars in the theater, but I think by the time Empire Strikes Back rolled out, I had certainly seen Star Wars on, VHS or something, and then saw Empire Strikes Back in the theater. And I think I fall in that age group, and certainly that age group of boys that it was pretty hard to avoid Star Wars, right? It was such a huge phenomenon, and who wouldn't love a story of the young boy who grows up a farmer and saves the universe, right? It's
right.
just a story that is meant for little boys, and so I grew up really in the franchise, and then you had I guess the prequel trilogy that came out when I was then in like my college years, and even though
Right.
those movies weren't great,
Right.
they were like events, right? Like they were. I remember having friends that waited in line for like 2 or 3 days
Right.
to like go. I mean, this was before you could pick your seat and buy your seat,
Yeah, it was first
on
come, first serve.
Fandango,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, and so they were just phenomenons, and and then Star Wars kind of took a break in my life. I think like it took a break in a lot of people's life. It's just because there
Right.
wasn't a lot of content being produced outside of what George Lucas had done, and then of course they sold it to Disney, and now content with the newest trilogy, the spin-off movies, and then of
Right.
course several TV series on Disney Plus, which a lot of them get criticized. A lot of them, your old fanboys don't love for this reason or another reason, or how dare you kill Luke Skywalker and Han Solo, right? There's
Right.
that crowd, but I still love it all. Like every time I hear the music, I get a tingle, and
So,
I can
like,
always watch it. So, right,
connected
like
with,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think when you get older, you're like, oh, Han Solo's the cool one, right? But when you're young, it is the guy that destroyed the Death Star. It's the one that I
Yeah.
think as a young boy
Well, the
you
hero.
relate to more, right? Like Han Solo was a man, right? Harrison Ford was a man, but Luke was the kid, basically. And yeah, and then of course all the toys and everything too, right?
Right.
That was
Right.
a huge
Right.
part of
Yeah.
my
So,
childhood as well.
so with all the, especially since Disney coming into the picture and producing so much more, um, now with all the newer stuff, who do you kind of identify with?
Oh, so this is a good question, and I
Yeah. Or
think this
actually,
leads.
yeah, and actually let's split that off into two versions. One is if you're back to your childhood self, seeing all the content now, who do you think you would be drawn to as the child version of yourself? And then as
Hmm.
your current like adult self, who do you? I don't know, maybe they're the same.
No, I understand what you're saying. I mean, I think that's an interesting question. So basically, what you're saying is, as a young child, if I had whatever 14 movies and all the TV
Right.
shows to
That we
watch,
have
like
now.
who
Right.
then would be the character? I mean, I'm guessing it's going to be someone like the Mandalorian, right? Like someone
Mm.
who seems to be appealing to today's younger children, right? I think the Jedi. Um, in many ways, and this has been a criticism of the Star Wars franchise over recent years, is like the Jedi story maybe is kind of old, overdone.
Oh, yeah.
It's and in fact, in times kind of a silly thing in today's society. So it might be someone more like, this kind of brooding, doesn't have a lot to say, but has a lot of empathy. So he takes care of Grogu type of character, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he's got cool weapons and all that type of thing.
Right.
That's my guess. What was the second part of your question? Or
Oh, is that as yeah, so maybe that as a child you would have liked The Mandalorian, but how about like you as a grown adult now?
yeah,
Do
sure.
you have a yeah, unless it's
Yeah.
also The Mandalorian.
Well, look, there's probably a lot of recency bias. Again, we're talking about the show Andor, but in one of the articles I wrote, and I don't think it's that controversial, but if I were to pick the best trilogy in the Star Wars franchise, maybe this will be controversial. Maybe we'll get flamed in social media. Um, I would actually say now it's Andor 1, Andor 2, finished by Rogue One, which is the movie that came out as the prequel to the first Star Wars movie, A
Right.
New Hope, right?
Right.
And those three stories connect, and if you've watched all of them, then they literally like end minutes before the next one begins, and then Rogue One ends minutes before A New Hope. It's just,
Okay,
so it's
okay.
almost, it's actually, I guess you could almost say, a very clean, um, it cleans up a lot of the mess that
I
and
see.
backstory that hadn't been told. But
Yeah, so it just bridge a gap
yeah,
in this
and
in the
so,
world. Okay.
excuse me. So, now if I say like these three are my favorite movies, or the two are TV shows, but who
Right,
would
right, right,
I?
right.
I don't
Or just
know. Like,
any. I mean, including the animation too. Like, did you watch
yeah,
the animations?
yes, a lot of it with my kid or my son.
Ah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
like the Clone Wars and those type of things. But I still think so. The show is named after Cassian Andor, but I don't know that it's him either. To be honest, like I think there maybe it's him. Maybe it's him because as you saw in the first series, it's more of like a spy show, right? It's more of
Right.
like a like
Espionage
a yeah,
and like
and
literally
that
backroom dealings and all
yeah.
that. Yeah, yeah.
So I guess at my age now, that feels more attainable. Like when we recently talked about spy movies, right? It's like that feels like something. Oh, maybe I could do that. I don't have Jedi powers. I don't have the Force, but maybe I could have been a spy in a rebellion
Oh, right,
against
right.
a fascist government, right? That feels like something to look up to, and frankly, in today's times, something that you could still look up to. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's my answer.
Ah, okay, cool. Yeah. So, oh yeah, and you said this, yeah, that it kind the question kind of connects to a little bit of your interview with yeah, with
Uh, you're
Varda.
you're talking about like, well, because she's in Andor too, right?
Yeah,
And so I don't know if you remember her in the first season. She is part of that group that Luthen has put together for just like missions, right? Like
yeah.
these missions, and you don't see a lot of her in the first season. You don't actually see a lot of her in the second season, but and this is just somewhat true about Andor. It's very much an ensemble show, and maybe besides a couple characters, many of the characters are only have a probably a few minutes of screen time in a few episodes, and yet they really make a mark. She plays Cinta, who again, she doesn't even really appear in this season. You don't really know what's happened to her because a few years have have come from season one to season two,
Huh?
and
Okay.
then all of a sudden she shows up, and she is, and I might be giving away a little bit of the plot, but there's this plan in action where Mon Mothma, who's the senator, is in on the rebellious group, right? She's trying to raise funds and do all these things. And, in season one, you get some sense of this weird relationship she has with like her friends and
Right.
whatnot. In this season, Cinta shows up to pick up one of her friends after or during even her daughter's wedding. And again, without giving away too much, in terms of the reason, you kind of know that she's there to get rid of him, right? Like here she is just picking him up like she's a, taxi
Yeah.
driver or whatever they have in that world. Um, but you could tell she's there to get rid of him. It's a very Godfather-like moment in the show.
Okay.
It's pretty chilling, and that's one of the things I liked so much about Andor. You get scenes like that feel more adult. They feel more nuanced than the type of scenes you would typically get in the Star Wars universe. Yeah, and then she also, I think, meaningfully, especially for this month, she plays a queer character, or at least
Oh,
a gay character. She has a love interest who's also one of Luthen's crew, and that really becomes part of the storyline for kind of the middle few episodes, because you see their romance evolve, but as most things in Andor do, it ends up evolving tragically. So, and I don't think that's the huge giveaway for most of Andor, because we all know Andor ends in Rogue One, and Rogue One ends with basically everyone dying. So, nobody has a long life in this trilogy. Well, let me ask you this question about that, because I think the show's amazing, like amazing. Like some of and it's written by Tony Gilroy, um, and what I don't know, when someone asks me, for instance, what are the best shows you watched this year, I rarely actually tell them, oh, you should watch Andor, because I actually think maybe a point of entry is that you have to at least like Star Wars, whether you've seen every Star Wars movie or show or are completely up to date. It is still in the Star Wars universe. Others will tell me, and I ask her this question during the interview, well, but what if someone, just never watched Star Wars, or they were born in kind of that era where Star Wars wasn't that popular, so they're just
right.
not that big of a fan? Should the show still be amazing for them? And so, what was your take on season one? And even more importantly, why didn't you watch season two? Is it just you didn't love season one, or do you think what I'm saying has some truth, that you're a little bit disconnected from that world? It's just not interesting enough for you to invest more time in?
Yeah. Well, I think like anything that's streaming, you're just up against a lot of competition, so it's not a high priority. Because everything gets
Yeah, that's
prioritized, and
true.
then there's like the next, glorious season of Bridgerton or whatever that gets hyped up, and then that gets prioritized. So Andor, I think, for me, generally is lower priority. It is more of like I'll watch it, I'll get around to it kind of thing. Although, I think season one for me was the most accessible. I was kind of
Okay.
surprised, but it was rather accessible for like someone who doesn't really, uh, yeah, like I don't really care about the ship designs or like the names of the characters. That's another one that's like uniquely Star Wars that I'm always like, how do they come up with those names? I can't seem to remember any of them. I think season one was solid, was that it you could see the politics and the and the chess moves being made. So it was more about that, rather than like keeping track of a certain character. Yeah. Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's what it was for
And
me. Yeah.
and I do think you would still like season two.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think you should watch it. Like season two, I think neither season, right? They don't talk about Jedi. You don't see any Jedi. I don't think you. I'm not even sure if they've ever mentioned. Maybe Jedi is not even known to most of the people in the show. You never hear about a Skywalker. This is all happening before the Death Star is built. So there's definitely a lot of Easter eggs to the Star Wars universe, but just pretend you're watching and in fact, there's a portion of the season and a world that they've built that very much, frankly, looks like France. Like you could just think you're watching a film about, the French Revolution in the 1800s or something like that. And I think it would be equally interesting, without all the, kind of Jedi magic stuff going on. So I highly recommend it. Yeah. No, I couldn't be more thrilled for Varada and the cast. I think they've done some great work, and probably should mention she's, at her young age has accomplished quite a bit in terms of being in some monster franchises, and the circuit too. But she's now been on Doctor Who and in the Star Wars universe, so she can. While I fully expect her to have nothing but a busy film and TV career, she could also probably just show up at Comic Cons every weekend and have her
Yeah.
fan base show up and see her. Yeah, she's
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
but very
Cool.
delightful.
All
So
right. Well,
yeah,
I'm looking forward to catching up on this interview then, for sure.
yeah. Well, quick question for you. So
Yeah.
why did you gravitate towards Star Trek?
Uh, Probably George Takei. Well, I mean, I should take a step back, but it's definitely like a father daughter. That's definitely a father daughter activity, or early when I was a kid, for sure. Um, and that was definitely facilitated by George because my dad saw like George on
Sure.
TV and stuff like that. So yeah, 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 yeah. And then yeah, I mean, my dad still likes Star Wars, but yeah, I don't know. Just yeah, early on, I think for me, just Star Trek is a bigger, yeah, existence in my life.
And I guess we talk about it like you're not supposed to like both, but I guess some people do like both, right? They're stylistically different, so maybe that's why some people gravitate toward one versus the other. But
You can both if you want.
um, have you ever met George Takei?
A couple times, yeah. First time I met him was a really long time ago. Maybe 2007, I think was the first time I met him, and then yeah, a bunch of other occasions. I think the most memorable was when his documentary, I think it got to premiere at LA Asian Film Festival, or maybe it went to Sundance, but anyway. But all of his, all the original cast members, most of them are still around, were actually came to the screening, to the opening of the film. And back then I was doing guest services, so I was taking care of all of them. So, obviously George, and his husband were there. I saw Leonard Nimoy before he passed away, Walter Koenig, Michelle, Nicole's there too. So, George is still very, 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 very active, with the Japanese American community. I think he just came
Yes.
out with a new children's book, I believe,
Okay.
as well. So yeah, yeah, George, really at this point in his life, really, is very politically involved and will continue to support, the Japanese American community. Yeah.
He seems like a trip though. Like every time I see him in interviews, he's got so much charisma. Does that come out when you meet him in casual settings?
Definitely, I think he has an on-off switch for sure. Yeah. And I think that I suppose it's I think that can be expected for someone who's been doing what he's been doing for such a long time. So
Got it.
yeah, he's a little bit. I don't know. I mean, he's still charismatic, but I don't know. I feel in smaller settings, yeah, he's a little bit more, yeah, different, I guess, in smaller
Yeah,
settings. And when I say
sure.
smaller settings, like five people or something like that, you know.
Maybe he's someone that will be like a dream casting if we can get him on this show.
Ah,
You know,
well, I have to
like
get through his husband, and I do, yeah, I try, yeah, like I try to stay in the good graces of his husband, so we'll see.
well, this was fun. For those of you listening, please follow and subscribe. I can't believe we've already pushed out more than 10 episodes. We're really moving. So it's been a blast. So thank you everyone for listening. And here is our interview with Varda. Well, this is Ben Lee here with another edition of United by Rice, and I'm really, really excited to talk to one of my favorite characters on one of my favorite shows, although that's maybe not humanizing you, but Varada Sethu. And help me correctly pronounce that, because I am terrible with pronunciations.
It's Varada Sethu.
I'll never be able to say that with the beautiful accent too. It's very hard to say. Um, it really is a pleasure to meet you, and I'll start with really the kind of big question, which is, what has this last year or two felt like for you? You have gone, like, you're in two of the biggest franchises
Yeah.
that you could think of.
um, yeah, it's been the craziest ride. I think when I got Andor season one, we shot that in 2021, and it kind of felt like the beginning of this massive shift in my career. And that was in COVID as well. So it was really unexpected. And I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So going in for that audition felt like, I was shooting beyond my, what felt like in my possibility at that moment. And yeah, so when I landed the role, even for the first season, it was surreal and incredible. And then this last couple of years to have been, I mean, I was shooting, I think I was 2 days off finishing on the second season of Andor when I got a phone call about doing an episode in Doctor Who. Um, and to then shoot, to finish Andor, shoot the episode of Doctor Who, and then I had 2 more days of Andor. Uh, and then this massive break during the actors' strike, and to come back for Doctor Who, it was just it it surpassed all of my dreams and hopes, and to keep getting called back to something that was just the best experience of my life. Yeah, it was incredible. It's been incredible.
Now, you mentioned you're a big Star Wars fan, and a lot of the folks I meet in their 20s and 30s aren't big Star Wars fans. Not like my generation, and I think it has something to do with which movies were in the theaters at what time, right? And
Mm.
whether what you grew up with as your Star Wars, kind of centerpiece. So for you, where did that fandom begin?
I think I do remember going to see the episodes 1, 2, and 3 in the cinema, but I think when I was much younger, it was just my brain's just too ADHD. It was just a lot of noise, and I couldn't quite um, absorb it. And it
Hmm.
actually, I would say, started a little bit later in life. It was in university when I watched episode 4. It kind of came crashing down on me as this film that was so much more than, it felt like so much more than a film. It felt like, layered and intelligent and philosophical, and I got the hype. So then that's when I kind of got absorbed back into it. I was probably like 19. It's it's like a Christmas rewatch.
Uh,
That's the tradition. So yeah, I think that's where it started. And then at university, in my final year, they were doing open casting calls for the John Boyega series that started episode 7.
uh-huh.
Um, it that for me reawakened everything as well, and of course I went along to that, and I used to doodle um, cartoons of me in Star Wars when I was supposed to be studying for my finals, and um, it's so wild to come full circle. It was I was almost delusional in like wanting to be in Star Wars so badly after that open call. It kind of got me through the dark times of uni of like studying, because it was like,
Mm.
well, when I'm out, I'll be able to be in Star Wars at some point. And then you kind of forget about it. I forgot about that being a possibility, and the trilogy finished, and then to land this, it was like the best gift ever.
Yeah. Well, and so you're well aware of the zeitgeist that's around Star Wars then, right? And um, has it been different than you expected? And part of the question I'm asking is, in particular, like minorities and women haven't always been treated well by the fan base. Now, maybe this is different because I just feel like Andor is universally loved, but
Mm, mm.
but how has the and in fact your character, we learn in season 2, is much more layered, right? You're also playing a queer character, um with a in an interracial couple, even, right? As much as races exist in the Star Wars universe,
Mhm.
what has been the reaction to you, and has any of it been negative and um hurtful in any way?
Um, for Andor, no. I think, and it was a pleasant surprise, because I think round about the time when our season was about to come out, there was all of this online. Uh, there was such a huge amount of noise because of Obi-Wan Kenobi had come out, and there was a lot of racist onslaught.
Hmm.
And Faye and I were concerned because, we were playing this openly queer couple. And myself being a woman of color as well, we were worried. And I had, like, my sister was telling me, you should turn the comments off, it's going to get really upsetting. I honestly didn't face any of that. And
That's great.
yeah, it says so much about how accepting people can be. If
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it made me have faith in humanity again a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I don't know that we're necessarily there yet as a civilization, but somehow, if people like the story, then it's okay, right? It's kind of like when people root for sports teams, right? They don't think
Yeah.
about color too much, but if the team's not performing well, then all of a
Yeah.
sudden crazy stuff comes out. What about the other side of the phenomenon of being in a Star Wars series? The action figures, the Comic Cons, the trading cards. Has that been bigger than you expected, or were you prepared for all of that?
I feel like I was prepared for it. And I mean, I haven't seen an action figure. I can't wait. If I do get to have a Cinta action figure, if that's out there somewhere, I'd love
Is
one.
there's no action figure yet? Is there a Funko Pop yet?
I don't think so. I don't know. I
It
don't
will
think
happen.
so.
It will
It will
absolutely happen.
at
There's
some
no way
point.
it won't. Yep.
um, but I think I was prepared for it. I feel like my agent, the agent I was with at the time, that agency represented John Boyega, and had represented Letitia Wright. So they were big franchise kind of
Hmm.
people, and they sort of prepared me for it, I think. So yeah, it didn't feel like a huge surprise.
Now let's talk about season 2, because I think I think maybe even more than season 1, it's been just critically adored and loved, and um, the layering of the story of the characters has been amazing. Now I think we only get to see you in 3 or 4 episodes, and of course, unfortunately, you suffer a fate that most of the, I guess, most of the individuals in the Rogue One canon
Yeah.
ultimately face. But talk to me about the arc that Cinta takes this season. We see her much like season one in these fierce, quiet moments, and that she's doing, the rebellion deed, but there's been some time that's passed since season one, right? There's some leaps forward. What should we know in terms of your character development, and then what are things that you just had to fill in, or Tony and you discussed as backstory, just to help inform your performance?
Um, yeah, Tony, I think he's really good at writing in the way that people talk, right? So there was a lot of filling in I had to do, or that we did together. There's a reference to I got injured on a mission, and it was obviously a traumatic experience, so it's not something that she wanted to go into so much when she's meeting Vel for the first time. And that is how people talk when, there's this whole other world that this whole life that she's led away from Vel, where she's been on other missions and has presumably assassinated numerous people. That she doesn't talk about it openly. It's not like you ever get a number. You just know, and even the way she turns up at the wedding, there's just an implication of what happens to take Homer. um,
Such
you
a
know,
powerful Godfather like moment, like in a Star
yeah,
Wars show, is amazing.
it's like the Grim Reapers arrived. It was such a great reveal. But yeah, I think she's lived this whole life away from Vel, and the what was on the page was what you saw, which is, the words that, yeah, I got injured and I spent that time thinking, and I realized that this is actually what I want from my life. But the bits that I filled in was, I guess, more the thought process that goes into, someone who's part of the rebellion, who's just so used to being a blunt instrument, um, a blunt weapon for the rebellion, and never, not really having to think for herself in terms of what she wants in her future, aside from revenge. Um, and, what happens when that you physically can't be channeling that rage and that hate. Um, and you have to sit with it and you have to think about what you want, and the vulnerability that comes with that. And it forced her to find hope, and the hope is that, you know it's so scary as a rebel to be thinking about what's beyond the wall, um, because it's always hanging in the balance. But the hope is that she will be with Vel one day. That is actually what she's fighting for. She kind of comes
Mm-hmm.
to terms with that. So there was a lot of, filling in the blanks for what might have happened, what the thought process was when she was injured, when she had to step out of missions for a bit. But there was also a lot of, what are the underlying messages that she's trying to get across to Vel with the few words that she exchanges. She can't go into depth.
Yeah, and there are, at the end of the day, very few scenes with Faye or Val, right? And did you two work off screen or have lots of conversations off screen on how to build the relationship, build the chemistry in the few scenes you have? Because you do go from, moments of coldness to then moments of romance, right?
Yeah, yeah. We talked a lot about, we talked about what it can be like to be in a relationship that, with someone that doesn't know how to show their love. in an affectionate way, and what might be holding Cinta back from committing to Vel, because in the first season what she says is the rebellion comes first, the fight comes first, this is, we take what's left. And what has changed in them in that time, and coming to season 2, and Vel's quite suspicious of Luthen, or kind of tired of being used by him, and Cinta's also coming to that realization. I think a lot of our discussions were about attachment theory, actually. Yeah, I mean, Cinta's a very avoidant person. I think she's been through a lot of hurt and a lot of trauma, and it's probably very difficult for her to attach to someone, to a person, especially if she loves them. So what she feels she can attach to is the cause, and that's not enough for her. Or she realizes, that's not enough for her life. Yeah.
The scenes in Gorman, and I think the world building of Gorman obviously strikes of maybe the French Revolution or eras of that, but it's also not hard to draw some comparisons to what's going on in the world today, right? And so, I'm curious, like, what do you hope people take away from the show? It's not just another Star Wars story.
There's so many things. There's so many themes. I would love for people to be compassionate with each other, have an understanding for how mechanisms are put in place by people who are using their power in the wrong ways. Yeah, that's a big question. That's a really big question, because I don't know what the solution. Well, not that that's what you're asking, but I don't know what the solution would be for the state of the world. I think a big part of it would be solved if people were respectful and compassionate with each other. And I think there's elements of that, and to address their hurt, and to address their own injuries, and what pushes them to act out, and to question, to stand up for others who aren't able to stand up for themselves, to keep hope.
Yeah. And the show, I mean, in obviously American politics, there very much is this partisan world, right? And it feels very black and white, but the show, I think, also maybe teaches you that everything's more nuanced, right? That people within either side have their own internal conflict, the moral ambiguity of what they're dealing with, like your character, for instance, right? It's you're fighting for what you believe in, and it's not always like so clearly this is a good person, this is a bad person, right? So
I loved that. I loved that so much about the script. It's there's so much gray area in real life, and it's a show that I'm so proud to be a part of, because it's not afraid to reflect. It's so truthful. It's so fearlessly truthful, and it's not afraid to reflect back to us parts of our society, parts of things that are happening in the world right now, and yeah, it's such a scary time.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, besides the your character's outcome, which we all know, like, do you see, how to phrase this question? Do you see the cast is so much of an ensemble cast, right? Even though the show's named after Cassian, and the women in the show in particular are some of the strongest characters, right? If there was a character that you could have played outside of Cinta, who would you have wanted to play?
It would. It's a really tough question, because I think Mon Mothma is just such a beautiful, incredibly complicated character. Mon Mothma would be would be one of the choices. But I also like the idea of Vel because she gets to. I still love the action that Cinta gets, so I'd love to still be part of the action, but also maybe be able to see Coruscant. I think Vel's the only one I can think of
Mm,
that straddles all the worlds. Yeah, I think her character is also very interesting because she's kind of vulnerable from the offset. You know, she's
yes.
in season one. I would say that she's tough, but she wears her heart on her sleeve. Yeah, maybe Vel, if not Mon
Okay.
Mothma.
Okay. Now, did you know, or how early did you know your character's journey in season two? Was that all kind of already known in season one, while from the beginning?
Not from season one, but I remember telling Faye as I read it. I remember telling her, "Cinta's not going to live. Cinta's not going to
Mm-hmm.
survive this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she's an assassin. She's always in danger." You know, and I mean, I was told just maybe this 6 months before we started filming. Tony does he does his rounds of Zoom meetings where he breaks down, you know, what the story arc is, and the kind of beats that he hopes. Yeah, he'll just fill you in on what he plans for the season, and it came as no surprise to me. Um, she is such a, I was going to say diehard rebel. You know, it is what she signed up for.
Yeah, she was going to sacrifice herself, right? That's part of the show for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. She was. I
Yeah.
mean, I especially in the as you said in the Rogue One world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's also, I think, ultimately, I think that's how she would have wanted to die.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah.
Um, so help me with a pitch, because I've told many people about how this is one of the best shows on television, but I think people assume if you're not a Star Wars fan, or at least pretty knowledgeable about the Star Wars universe, then they won't enjoy it. So
Mm.
what do I tell them? What's the pitch to get them to watch this show?
Um, the pitch is actually, I would draw from what Tony said to me, which is that forget Star Wars. Forget don't watch The Mandalorian. Don't watch Star Wars. Don't watch any of it. It's this is purely a political drama thriller. It is a spy story. It just happens to be taking place within the Star Wars universe, but it is fundamentally, to its core, a story about fascism uh, and and rebellion around the world. Um, yeah, that's how I'd sell it. It's a political thriller, spy thriller.
Yeah. And one of the best out there for sure. Now, you're not the first South Asian woman to be in a Star Wars show, but it still has to be incredibly meaningful to fans out there. Do you think the industry is evolving in terms of how they see representation, and and how, like, in your, your relatively short career, how have you seen that change? Because again, you're in Doctor Who, you are in a Star Wars franchise, and 10 years ago, I don't think we would have seen that.
Yeah, I'd like to think that it is improving. I think it's a I have seen a huge change in scripts, the quality of scripts that I've read. I remember back in the day, like, I don't know, even 5, 6 years ago, sometimes you'd get a script and you'd just think, is there anything, are they going to make anything that's beyond the stereotype? It might have been a terrorist role. It might have been, a story about a doctor or whatever, and it's all of those things exist in the world, fine, but I would love to see a brown woman finding love, and I loved
Hmm.
seeing that on One Day, for example, Ambika Mode being the lead in that, and I loved that. Yeah, and Bridgerton, I love that we're seeing We're seeing, black and brown faces and South Asian, East Asian face. Like it makes it, we get to take up space and we get to share our narratives, and it's beautiful because it normalizes us. It brings diversity, which I think is a good thing, and it stops us being othered.
Right.
We have our differences, but there's also we're human beings. A human is relatable, whatever shape or package they come in.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you feel like, do you think about your identity much when you're thinking about future roles or other roles, or a responsibility to carry your identity? Because in many ways, the roles that we've talked about mostly today, they could have been any ethnicity, right?
Mm.
It wasn't focused on
Mm-hmm.
South Asian or Indian in any way. But in terms of choices that you make overall, or choices that you'll make in the future, how much do you want to represent South Asian culture and identity?
I still haven't figured out the right answer to that. I'm still on my own personal journey and like reclaiming my culture and my heritage. I think a part of me that I didn't want to engage with when I was a lot younger, and I'm finding my feet in that. I have been over the last 10, 15 years, and I don't think it's going to be at the forefront of my choices in the future, but it's certainly it's what makes me unique. So I think it's a weird way to go about it, maybe, but like I want to discover more about myself, me as a person, so I can understand what I can bring to a role. I think that's how I would think about it. But if I'm given a script for it, I'm not going to be. I'm trying not to put so much weight, and it would make it quite heavy if I'm thinking all the time about my identity, or like
Yeah.
representation.
Yeah. And that makes sense. I mean, number one, you want to work. And number two, actually, what a lot of people will say is it's actually great to play roles that weren't necessarily written for a South Asian woman
Yeah,
either, right? Because that's
yeah.
true representation. And that does a big service to our industry and to our people as well. Well, I know we should wrap up soon, so I've got maybe some fun, lighter questions for you to wrap. Um, we're not in the Jedi world in Andor, but if you had a lightsaber, what color would it
Blue,
be? Well, that was a
blue.
quick answer.
I've thought about it.
Yeah, yeah. And blue because it's like one of the OG colors, or blue because it's your favorite color?
Well, my favorite color is green, but I think it's because it's the
Okay.
OG color. I think
Yeah.
I can't imagine holding anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. And finally, we are united by rice. And one of the questions we ask everybody, and eventually people will catch on to this, is, after a long shoot, comfort food, what's your favorite rice dish?
It would be a biryani for
Ah,
sure.
easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also one of it. And how spicy do you, are you good with spice?
Yeah, yeah. I'm good with spice, and it needs to be spicy, but I'm not someone who would want to ruin the food by putting too much in. So yeah.
Yeah.
A good
Well,
like 8 out of 10.
okay. That's probably higher than I would do, because that would definitely be making me sweat. Well, it was lovely to talk to you. Congratulations on all your work, but Andor season 2 will have you, I'm sure, attending a lot of award shows, and look forward to seeing you out there on the red carpets.
Thank you, Ben.
All right. Take care. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.